Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's Breaking History, where once again I'm very happy to be joined by Gordon. And how you doing, Gordon?
I'm good, man. How are you, Matt? It's good to see you.
Thank you. Likewise. And yeah, just if there's any technical issues that happen to emerge, I've been having issues here. I'm in Sochi currently, hence the weird background at a little hotel with some weird, questionable Wi-Fi connections. So if I glitch out or something, I do terribly apologize. I know you can definitely carry the water.
Doc, comrade. Yeah. How's the motherland, Russia?
Yeah, it's nice. It's pretty. The weather's nice. This side of the Altai Mountains, it's like Sochi's south, right on the Black Sea. It's kind of a touristy vacation spot. This is where the Olympics were hosted back in 2014. So the weather is beautiful. That's when I left home. There was the first major snowfall of the season. So my wife sent me pictures of just Montreal buried under snow in a snowstorm. And I landed here. It's like, well, it's Celsius. So Celsius, it was like plus 20, which is, I don't know what that is for Fahrenheit. We use Celsius in Canada. Pretty warm. So I could even take a dip in the swimming pool. That was cool. And yeah, we're just at a film festival. It's an international film festival. Somebody caught wind of my Bering Strait Arctic development documentary that I aired on Badlands last week, and they liked it a lot, and made a translation into Russian, submitted it to this festival, and it was accepted. So on Sunday, I'm gonna watch the thing on the big screen and get to speak to a bunch of students, young people, about the idea of U.S., Russian, and Chinese collaboration on Arctic development, and a lot of fun history. So that's going to be cool. And yeah, just otherwise seeing the sights, saw some Orthodox churches, and just trying to take it all in, but it's fun.
Good. Well, that's awesome that you're there, and it's cool that you're going to get to air that on Sunday. Yeah, I hope you get recognized for it, like an award or something, but just cool that you get to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, before we jump into any of the topics for today, I know you wanted to talk a lot about the developments on the Ukraine front, and definitely we'll do that. But let's start with a little word from one of today's sponsors, Rise Attire. So let's just run that thing. And today, we don't have to read any of the ads. They were all totally packaged with multimedia audio visuals, so that makes our lives a lot easier. So here's Rise Attire.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
Okay, all right, that's a new one. I never saw that before.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, and Wingo in the chat says that YouTube stream is not playing. We are streaming to our YouTube account, but I think on this specific StreamYard account, we might be linked to our old YouTube account. And I have no way of linking us to our new one, so I'm gonna have to get somebody on the back end to do that. Yeah, so like I tried to go to the link to look at it, and it says the video has been taken down by the uploader. This is just more nonsense from YouTube. We're not allowed to be monetized on YouTube. Anytime we get monetized, they take our account away. They give us stupid reasons why they do it. I'm really getting sick of like just the nonsense. But I am, it's like after I go spend a weekend with like-minded people in a room with them, and you just have normal conversations and you just talk to people like the way that you and I talk to one another on stream. It's hard to go back to like the fake world where people like can't handle honesty and they can't handle truth, and you just realize how satanic our world is, and like how literally our entire world is just on its knees worshiping the devil. I was sitting in a church this morning at my daughter's preschool, attending chapel, and the kids come in and they sing and all that. And my wife handed me something that was sitting on the pew when we walked in, and I opened it up and it said, "Welcome to our ecumenical community." And I just started laughing. I took a picture of it and sent it to Ash, because I didn't even know what ecumenism was until Eric Rice and Ash educated me on what it was. And I was like, and then here's this church. It's not my church, but it's just where my kids go to preschool. But beautiful church. It's like you're sitting there, you almost feel like you're in a European cathedral, right? Beautiful church. But yeah, right there.
What kind of church is it? Is it like
it's a Baptist church. It's a Baptist church, and it's and there they are right there promoting ecumenism. And right as we're walking in, my wife is telling me how she was speaking to one of the teachers. It was a teacher one of our kids had the year before, last year. And the teacher is conservative, and they've already established that. So they're talking, and the teacher was just saying how hilarious it was, ridiculous, pathetic, that she had to ask permission from the principal, who then had to go ask permission from the clergy, whether she was allowed to teach the 3-year-olds the Pledge of Allegiance. And that was potentially controversial. And I'm just I don't know, man. It's all just so. It's the devil, man, everywhere. The devil is just everywhere. The devil runs the churches. The devil runs the schools. The devil runs the government. And when you get in the room with a couple hundred like-minded people, and you just are talking, you're not even necessarily having political conversations or whatever. You're just talking about life, talking about quote unquote small talk, but it's actually interesting small talk. Talking about what businesses they do, what's their business, what's their life, whatever. And then you go back to the fake world. It is harder and harder to go back to the fake world and speak to people who I've known for 20 years who just can't handle that kind of honesty. And it's really pathetic, actually. It makes me kind of mad, how pathetic it all is. And it also makes me appreciate how Donald Trump comports himself, because I think Donald Trump intentionally does things to trigger people, including his own base. That's one of the things we probably should talk about today, is some of the things he says and does that I think are 100% designed to trigger MAGA and to piss off his own base, because people get complacent and they get swept up in the emotion of it. And they're like, oh, well, we don't need to do anything because Donald Trump's going to save the day because he's the God King. And so we don't need to do anything. I can just sit back and just ride the coattails and enjoy the salvation that's going to be delivered to me by a secular Messiah, and that's why I think Trump does a lot of the things. He's a troll. He's like a real life living, breathing troll, and he's so good at it. He's so good at saying things that piss people off, including people.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
I love it. I love it, honestly.
Very, very talented. Let me just quickly on the issue of ecumenicism, because it's come up a lot as well in my research and discourse. Definitely a special variation of that has been promoted by the oligarchy. But what does it mean to you? Can you define it?
What's that? Ecumenism?
Yeah,
the way that Ash and Eric Rice describe it to me, and then I went and looked up definitions of it, of course, and it seems to track. But they describe it as the melding of different doctrines of faith into something that is communal, melding everything together into and I'm sure in the context of this church and this pamphlet that was a welcome kind of pamphlet, I'm sure they meant it within the confines of Protestantism and welcoming people of all versions of Protestantism. That's probably how they meant it, but it's just a weird word to use because, as Eric Rice and Ash explained to me, I think it's what's described in the Book of Revelations as what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to take all the religions of the world and meld them into one, and then he will be at the seat of the throne, at the head of the host of this new one world religion, which of course a lot the New World Order, globalism, all that kind of nonsense. Malthusianism, all the things that you and I have talked about, the different versions of the occult. Yeah. And so it was a little disturbing walking
well,
into.
don't get, I mean, I don't know about this particular Baptist church.
Yeah.
But what I could say though is, like, for me, I first encountered the word about 2007 or so. And it was when I began doing work on anti-imperial movements in America. So I was like working through like that was the first time I seriously did put myself on a homework assignment to really try to work out what was John F. Kennedy doing. I tried to just listen to tons of his speeches and read the transcripts. Same thing for Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and Bobby Kennedy. I gave myself a year where I was just looking at only where did positive movements emerge. So the first time I encountered the term was when I was reading through Martin Luther King Jr. Speeches, the leader of the civil rights movement. And the terminology was coming up. So my concept of it was originally quite positive. And then I realized over time that there's a battle to try to own the word, like to infuse meaning into the word itself. Because the word, I think the official definition of it simply means the fostering of greater Christian unity by encouraging dialogue and collaboration among churches that share the core belief in Jesus, the Bible, and baptism. There's a broader definition that applies it to the goal of cooperation and collaboration amongst different beliefs around common principles. So these are, like, in my view, the sort of thing that you and I promote anyway, is like trying to look for like what is healthy, moral, universal within Islam, within Confucianism, within Christianity, within Judaism, and trying to get
common ground. Yeah. Focusing on common ground so that you don't get tripped up by the differences and then get tricked into wanting to kill one another. Yeah,
exactly. It's not trying to modify the different faiths or something like that around some like some Borg homogenization. That's a hard word to say. Agenda, but it's rather just to simply look for, okay, where are we all human? Where are the common principles that are universal? And how can we like ignore the things that would separate us, which oligarchs would always try to amplify to get us to go tribal, to get us to see the other as somehow the enemy or inferior to us, which causes a dehumanization. And it's a recipe book for clash of civilizations. So it's like, you got this healthy idea, I think, of ecumenicism, which has been, as a word, again, there's a battle over it. And then you've got this sick satanic idea, like that's the one you've identified there, which is to literally transform everybody into a blob that could be controlled by a high priesthood that destroys all of the moral principles inherent in every religion. And that way it makes us all more easy to control in our divine superstition or whatever. So I don't know about this Baptist church. I have no idea. I mean, maybe I know definitely when I went to a Turkish airport in Istanbul on my way to Sochi, I was like in a layover for like 13 hours. It was crazy long. And they had this like universal prayer room, which on the surface seems healthy, but I walked inside and there's something kind of sick about it as well. Like they had every single symbol of every faith. Thankfully, not this satanic church. That wasn't there. But they were trying a little bit too hard to just like pump everything into like one room. Kind of like the Temple of Understanding at the UN. You know, when you look at these images of the UN Temple of Understanding that was overseen by, it was a theosophical design in 1946 or 47 that was designed to sort of create this new world spirituality. Yeah, it kind of felt like that. It felt like it smelled like sulfur.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And, you know, I mean, I think the thing that triggering isn't the right word, but the thing that kind of set it up was just literally seconds before I saw this thing, my wife was telling me how, you know, it was considered a controversy to teach a 3-year-old the Pledge of Allegiance, right? From a church's standpoint.
Okay,
and she was just saying how the teacher was telling her how those churches are just very, very liberal. It's like a very liberal church. And then you combine that with the modern zeitgeist, which has just been brought to the surface. I think it's always been there. It's not like we've suddenly reached this point. But where, you know, I think Protestantism has been inverted and turned inside out. And evangelical Christians have been conditioned and trained to worship the state, specifically the state of Israel, but just government in general, and to seek out earthly masters and to replace God with these authorities where, these earthly authorities, where contrast that with Catholicism. I think Catholicism at least has like the church like explicitly identified as that authority. So you can at least give them credit there where it's like it's explicitly identified. Whereas Protestantism, it's not explicitly identified, because of course Protestantism is supposed to be the divergence from that. And so then you end up just idolizing something else. And often it comes in the form of Zionism, the government of Israel, the factions that fuel Zionism, which are the NGOs, the politicians, the things that make you feel good because they say all the words that, get you all excited for the second coming and dispensationalism.
Yeah. I got a crazy one for you here based on what you were just saying. We often talk about controlled dialectics, right? So here's one thing that's really interesting. If people can just Google this. Francis Bellamy, Madame Blavatsky, and fascism. Just Google it and see what comes up. And there's an author who's done some really good work, but a lot of people have, called Rex Curry. I've looked through a lot of his work. I used it in my research on the theosophists as sort of the agency, the intelligence operation behind the creation of a new world religion, that whole like new world order reset idea in the religious domain. So Francis Bellamy is the founder, the creator in 1892 or 1889 of the Pledge of Allegiance in America. So the idea also of like, okay, that's fine. Okay, no problem there whatsoever. And I'm going to send you guys a link to check this out. But just to say how like controlled dialectics of extremes are often organized. Francis Bellamy is a follower of Madame Blavatsky. Francis Bellamy was actually the founder at the time of the National Socialist Party of America. And the origins of the American fascist movement. So when you look at in the 1930s, 40s, and how it continued on into the 1950s, 60s, there was a undercurrent of American fascism, which you could see like these marches for Hitler in the streets of New York at Madison Square Garden. There was 30,000 people celebrating Adolf Hitler and Nazism in 1933, 34, 36, 37, 38. It was a big thing. And there was like, when you look at some of the pictures that are available still online of these Madison Square Garden U.S. Nazi rallies, you've got like George Washington, the fasci, and then you have like Hitler in these big banners.
I've seen the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had the organizations. There was a number. There's a multitude of these different political parties that were American fascist parties, like the Silver Shirts, the Technocracy Inc. Party. There was a number. A lot of them became UFO cults in the 1950s, 60s afterwards. But when you look at it, they find themselves rooted in the teachings and writings of Francis Bellamy, which is interesting. So you actually, though I am okay with the Pledge of Allegiance in principle, outside of all of the context, the idea of like, I'm a defender of nationalism. I'm a defender of patriotism. So of course, things that enhance that are good to me. But you could see how, if you control the environment in which that emerges, it could be channeled towards a perverse form of nationalism that becomes very quickly fascism and imperialism, like we saw in the case of Germany in the 20s onward. So there is a sick game that theosophists play by trying to create or control the left and the right extremes, right? So they both, knowing that both will be, when left and pushed to their logical conclusion, will converge ultimately on chaos. So whether it's Bolshevism and National Socialism, both of them are getting funding by the same Wall Street City of London bankers.
Yeah.
So
they're both predicated on socialism. Like they both ultimately come back to statism and authoritarianism. And that was the whole fake dialectic that they created after World War I, where on the quote unquote right you had National Socialism, and on the left you had communism. And it's like, well, like which one? Hey, Europe, which one do you want? Because in Germany they had the Communist Party took over in the wake of World War I and led to Weimar Germany, and then just all kinds of debauchery and degeneracy, and Munich became the sex tourism capital of the world. And in ways that are far grosser and more perverse than I think most people listening right now could appreciate. And then that lived experience is what drove the people of Germany, to National Socialism, because coupled with that was the rhetoric of traditionalism and the restoration of the nuclear family, and conventions and tradition and all those sort of things, the things that are familiar, the things that we would probably identify as MAGA, and pure populism, which is one of the things, by the way, that the media did 10 years ago when they tried to brand MAGA as the second coming of Hitler. Is they were like, well, we've heard this before. This is all very familiar. And, these people are just all such disingenuous. It's all just such disingenuous trash, because the entire spectrum that they created for Europe in the 1920s was communism. It was just, do you want communism or do you want communism light? It's all communism, but do you want communism or communism light? And it took a few decades to matriculate over to America, but it finally did when the Trotskyites took over the Republican Party in 1971 and turned the Republican Party into a communist organization, which of course it still is.
It's interesting how that works. But you see it, though, today, right? Like I saw even in the Badlands briefs, I think it was today or yesterday, there was coverage of the Washington Post, which had said something, had an article describing the civil war being sparked amongst MAGA by Nick Fuentes. Yeah. And I read that and I found that interesting because it has an element of truth. When you look at Nick Fuentes, who I've been following pretty closely for a number of years now, he's somebody who literally is, he's talented. That's true. I don't know what his training was, but he has been consistent in promoting Hitler to MAGA conservatives who have become, for obvious reasons, quite anti-Israel. For obvious reasons, Israel has deserved the animus that it's gained and is continuing to gain from American conservatives. However, that being said, the idea of rehabilitating Hitler, the Holocaust, Hitler, Nazi idea, what Nazis were about. Nick Fuentes has been translating speeches, encouraging people to listen to AI translations of Hitler speeches, saying hey, doesn't that criticism of cultural Bolshevism sound so reasonable in our current day and age? And maybe the Jew bankers were the cause of him, being treated like a bad guy. Or you have Dan Bilzerian, as well as another person who's been doing this, Stu Peters, as well as another voice that sort of came out, former mercenary, who all of a sudden, like a rapper, then mercenary for hire, all of a sudden became an influential voice for truth during COVID. And now all of a sudden is promoting Hitler rehabilitation documentaries and narratives. So I think that they actually have an effort. Even Grok was doing a rehab of Hitler at the beginning when his first night.
Mecha Hitler.
Huh?
They called it Mecha Hitler when he started, when Grok had a glitch and just started Hitler posting left and right. They called it.
Yeah, I don't think that was a glitch. I don't think it was a glitch. I think it's expanding
I think it was. I think they hit a button and let it happen. Yeah, it was. But they called him. The meme was Mecha Hitler. That's what they called it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll have to say, I see it. I see the nudging towards trying to first warn about this absurdity that on its own would never happen, but then working hard to nudge people who are a little bit ignorant about what was Hitler. I'm writing a book. It's going to be finished pretty soon. I've been publishing in installments on Badlands called Why Real Patriots Don't Think Like Hitler. I'm doing that not because I'm trying to waste my time. I'm doing that because I literally see greater and greater swaths of my audience, people who generally have liked my work, becoming pro-Hitler. It's happening at a greater rate every month. So I'm writing the book to try to get people to see was Hitler really a Christian? Hell's no, he wasn't. Was he an occultist? Was he promoting occult networks? Yes, he was. Was he rewriting the Bible to accommodate the political agendas of the empire he wanted to create, the 1,000-year Reich? Oh, sure, he was. What were the New Templars as the source of power behind the Vril Society and these magicians, black magicians, occultists working with Tibetan black magician lamas? What were they trying to do? Opening portals to another dimension. They were doing these things, but that's not the stuff we're taught about. They were eugenicists. They were killing their own people who were unfit to try to save money. So they were doing these things at the same time as they were Zionists as well. Like Eichmann was studying Hebrew to practice Kabbalah because they had an idea of creating a kingdom of Jews in the Holy Land tied to their idea of Solomon's temple. So they actually had that. That was the Havar agreement was what was behind that. So that's the stuff that you're not allowed to learn about when you listen to like Hollywood renditions of Holocaust movies and cartoonification of Hitler. You're not allowed to learn about the thing that you would help you understand where this has already come back to life in a bad way in our current world. That you're not allowed to see, because Hitler really was evil, but not for the reasons that we're told. It's for totally other reasons.
Yeah. And, before I even came to Badlands, I was in contact with people. I was doing shows with people, and I had several people try to pitch me on all that. And basically, because they bought into that too. They bought into all of that. And of course, a lot of the stuff that I was researching and understanding about Israel and about all of the conditions of the current world fed into their narrative that they were trying to pitch. But ultimately, what I came back to, and I still stand on, is, Nick Fuentes' argument is that Hitler was the good guy, and that Hitler was, the last gasp of earnest European leadership trying to stave off all the things that you and I talk about, the things that, the occult and the takeover and the elimination of Western culture. And my question that nobody has been able to answer yet definitively is, if it is true that, and I brought this up on Saturday night during DPH as like a member of the audience, but if it is true that Adolf Hitler escaped in World War II and didn't die in that bunker because they never found his body, never produced the body, you would think the Soviets would have as a trophy, right? They didn't. And then, of course, we get CIA documents that indicate he was in South America in 1955, spotted. If that's true, that means he was living under the protection of the very people that Nick Fuentes claim took over the world and now rule Western civilization, which, of course, is true to an extent. I mean, there's certainly truth to the idea of James Angleton and, the Zionists that controlled the CIA and controlled America. Some of them are Jewish, some of them weren't. But the point is that Hitler would have been living under the protection of those people, the protection of these ardent pro-Israel people, both Christian and Jewish. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why would they have allowed Hitler to live out his days if he wasn't an agent whose whole mission was to destroy Europe through a giant fake dialectic, which ultimately became World War II?
Dude, what you just said is brilliant. And I want people here in the audience to really soak in the paradox, the simple but elegant paradox that Gordon just simply outlined, because paradox is the key to discoveries, to shifting paradigms in a truthful way. And it's like there's split thinking for those who maintain that Hitler was the good guy of the story, this brilliant hero that had to be denigrated, because he tried to beat back the Jew bankers, and now, we should do him honor by rehabilitating him. Most of those people are quite well informed on conspiratological research, pretty well informed, and they generally have encountered also knowledge. They have knowledge that Operation Gladio was a Nazi global paramilitary secret army that was organized by Nazis that then organized movements in every country during the Cold War that were integrated with Western intelligence. They generally know that too, and they generally see that as a bad thing because they think that everything that happened after World War II was completely controlled by those very Jew bankers that Hitler tried to fight. Okay, so if that's the case, combined with what you said, how do they resolve that the leading Nazis were never punished but were given plush new assignments after the war, managing the world, managing even the anarchist, terrorist, Maoist, Leninist terrorist groups in America, in Europe, like the Red Brigades, in Germany and in Italy, and in the Weathermen in America? These are like Maoist, Leninist student terrorist groups that were provably managed by hard World War II fascists that were nominally against communism.
Yeah.
How do they explain that paradox? It's like
They can't. They can't. Yeah. And then you look at the things that the subjects that are we're not supposed to discuss, and obviously like Israel is one of those. But I would also point to just the fact that like the Trotsky, the origins of neoconservatism being Leon Trotsky, like that is not ever discussed in the American zeitgeist at all. Nobody understands that the Republican Party is actually a communist organization. They think that like when Chris Paul and I say that we're just being like tongue in cheek, like we're just being cheeky when we say that stuff. I'm not being cheeky. It's literally a communist organization that is masquerading as a populist nationalist movement. It's just not. It's a despicable lie. So, I think a great way to transition us into the discussion at hand is this article. I shared this article. I read a paragraph of this on stage at GART. This was published last week. Theodore Lukianoff says he's the editor. He's the editor-in-chief of Russia and Global Affairs, chairman of the Presidium of the Council on Foreign and Defense Policy, and research director of the Valdai International Discussion Club, whatever those things are. So he's credentialed, right? This is an op-ed that was published in RT. And the title of it is Trump Hasn't Changed America, but He Has Revealed It. And I actually thought that there was a really striking paragraph here. The second paragraph is striking because he writes, Trump's personality is impossible to ignore. His sheer theatricality colors everything he touches and can make events seem more chaotic than they really are. But here's the important point. Trump does not break American political conventions. He exaggerates them. He turns their volume up so loud that one can finally hear the underlying logic clearly. And that is one of the best summations, I think, of what I have come to call Trumpomania, like the kayfabe, to describe Trump. I think that is one of the best, just concise descriptions of what I mean when I say Trumpomania, and I talk about the theater that Trump engages in and why he does it. Because you hit on something that's very accurate, ostensibly, which is the civil war that's erupting right now in the Republican Party. It's very clear it's happening. It's openly being discussed. The New York Times is writing about it. All of the left-wing mainstream media outlets are talking about it. The ones that have a vested interest in trying to divide and conquer the MAGA movement. I would not describe this though as something that Nick Fuentes has caused. I would say this is something that Donald Trump has caused, and he's done it quite intentionally. I don't think, and this is what I try to explain to some of these people that I speak to offline, who do have that who maintain that belief about Adolf Hitler, is I try to explain to them, do you think it's a coincidence that we are where we are right now? Do you think that in spite of Donald Trump, this civil war is happening right now? Do you think that is a feature or a bug? And they think it's a bug. They think that it is like, in spite of Donald Trump and everything he has successfully been able to bring to the surface to force people to talk about, that despite his best efforts, this has happened. And if you kind of rewind the clock and you just look at his behaviors over the past 12 months, you can go back way further than that, but over the past 12 months, it's very clear that he is the chaos conductor, as Burning Bright calls him, orchestrating all of this. I mean, just look at all of the things he's come out and said, his moves, his appointments, like all of those things. He has totally fueled the idea that the nation, that the Israel lobby totally controls the U.S. government. And normally in the past, it's been one of those things where it's, if you are looking for it, you could find it, but it was not right there on the surface, right? These were things that were happening behind closed doors, that were happening kind of under the surface, and you had to dig in and find the connections to make those arguments. Trump has, to this guy's point, brought all that to the surface. He openly says it. He's embracing it and wrapping his arms around it and doing a little bear hug and being like, "Oh, we love it so much." One of the best example, or not best examples, but a great example is this morning we had Barack Ravid, who I mention all the time, share, or maybe it was last night, this letter Yeah, this is from 6 hours ago. President Trump sent this to Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel. And it is a letter lobbying for the pardon of Netanyahu, like to pardon Netanyahu.
Yeah, I noticed that. Wait, yeah, how do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different strategic reasons for Trump to do this. I mean, I'm of the belief that I think Trump orchestrated the charges in the first place, because those charges that were brought in 2019, which all things considered were kind of low-hanging fruit. And we've seen a mirror of that now in America, where some of the things that these high-profile people are being charged with, arrested and charged with, are kind of like process crimes almost. You know, it's like lying to Congress, things that are very low-hanging fruit that are probably relatively easy to prove, but they are just scratching the surface when you talk about the levels of corruption that these people have engaged in, right? It's like charging Hillary Clinton with like campaign finance fraud, right? In spite of all the other things she's done. But I do think that this was brought against Netanyahu. I think Sheldon Adelson was probably one of the people who lobbied behind the scenes to get it brought against him, primarily because one of the charges involves Netanyahu going behind Adelson's back and trying to collude with the left-wing media oligarch in Israel to get better coverage of Netanyahu. And he said, I will cut Adelson out and I will not let his reporters get this kind of access that I will give your reporters. And my guess is that Trump, knowing Sheldon Adelson had a huge ego, is probably went to Adelson and was like, hey, look at what Netanyahu is doing to you. Like, he just stabbed you in the back. We should do something about this. You know, like I could see that being the dynamic where it's not Sheldon Adelson doing it out of some altruistic, let's get BB, let's do the right thing for America. I could see it just as a game theory as, hey, Sheldon Adelson, Netanyahu literally stabbed you in the back. We have a recording of him speaking to this guy, your arch rival in the media landscape. He's colluding with this guy against you. What are you going to do about it? And then Sheldon Adelson makes phone calls, flexes his muscles, and gets charges brought against Netanyahu. I mean, that's how I probably would speculate that happened. But it's all being prodded along by Trump. And by the way, all of his rhetoric that he delivers post 2019, after these charges are brought, in Israeli media, when he's speaking to people like Barak Ravid in interviews that never see the light of day in the American media, but are all over the place in Israel, he's always anti-Netanyahu every single time. Yeah.
I guess, it's good to hold out, like we've spoken about the issue of bicameral thinking, but you definitely want to hold a variety of hypotheses in the mind. Like for me, I try to keep, I think for all of us watching and doing the show, is, we try to keep as much of a top-down whole concept, a thumbnail sketch about the world, about as much of the past that we can think about contextually, that's shaping the dynamics in which our integrated world is unfolding, and the future orientation of the battles over what ideas of the future are clashing. Because we generally know in broad terms, not every detail, but we know in broad terms the essentials of what the oligarchical system wants. We know that they want, even though it takes different flavors, we know that they want world population reduction. We know that. We know they want to homogenize and mediocritize the culture and the religious institutions of the world to something very controllable. They want to make us more hedonistic and think that our spirituality emerges out of some erotic or hedonistic impulse instead of something higher, as the agapic sort of qualities that the human soul is endowed by when we're healthy and mature. They don't want us to access those sentiments. They want us to like live and be bounded by the lower sentiments that makes us more bestial, right? That locks us into the senses. We know that they want to make us more divided with ourselves as individuals, but also within communities, within nations, within families, divide to conquer, right? There's so many ways of doing that. So we know that these are like the general formulas, and whatever ideologies within that can be infused into schools, into books, into music, into movies that enhance those outcomes will be promoted, right? We know that. And we know that the more healthy view of natural law is premised on the opposite of all of those things, right? That makes us that sees population growth as good because more people is more problem solvers, that that we can participate in the unfolding of creation as expressions of that creative process in more and more perfect ways.
God says, "Be fruitful and multiply."
Yeah, he's not fucking around. He makes, sorry for the language, but he means it. So, but that means you got to be fruitful. If you're going to multiply, you can't multiply like cells in a jar or bacteria. You can't do it quantitatively alone. To multiply means that that quantitative growth of multiplication has to be justified and validated by qualitative growth, the fruitfulness. So
Prosperity.
to be fruitful, yeah, you got to be creative. You got to really make technological and artistic leaps of excellence, right? And never allow yourself to get worse, to always get better, and to have a more perfect union. And I guess that's the healthier idea of a union, right? Like the American Revolution is, I think, a good example of a healthy ecumenicism, where you had so many different denominations, Quakers and there are how many different Calvinists and so many different Lutherans and so many different variations of Christianity that all had a lot of disputes amongst each other, but had to work together for an outcome that was based in freedom. And so that would be, I think, just be a healthy idea and it had to involve the leaders of Morocco, Muslim leaders like Hyder Ali, who was the head of the Muslim rebellion against the British Empire in India, that was writing letters to the Continental Congress saying that your fight is our fight against empire. That's again, you have Muslim Indian leaders, Moroccan emperors, Sidi Muhammad, also writing to George Washington, protecting him from Barbary pirates. And you got Eastern Orthodox leaders around Catherine the Great, also, helping out the American Revolution. You got Catholics around Marquis de Lafayette and the French Revolution or the French Republicans who are coming in and working with the American troops. So you got all of these different religious labels that see a common idea that freedom is the food that the soul needs to exist. We can't tolerate anything less, and we got to work together in some way. That's healthy ecumenicism. That's just a good opportunity to just insert that.
Yeah. And it's a good point because it's silly that the number of Christians that have killed each other over silly tribalism of denominations. Oh, well, your denomination is not my denomination, and then in Europe you have wars over that, right? Over things that literally have nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus and specifically what he was instructing people to do. It's all interpretations that were layered on top of it later by biblical scholars that then become adopted as part of a central part of a doctrine. And then there's differences in doctrine that drive people to kill each other. And so I agree with you. It's there's a point where you throw all that stuff aside and say, well, that's silly. We shouldn't be at each other's throats over that kind of stuff. So I would agree with you on that, the healthy ecumenicalism. If that's what all of this is, and what I read in that pamphlet this morning, that's fine. That
may not be it. What you read in the pamphlet may be totally satanic.
Yeah, it was just seeing that word after hearing how liberal this church was, and that the church was not, and it wasn't the school, by the way, it was the church, two different entities. The school was just a small little feature of the church. But then hearing that it's considered controversial to teach toddlers about the Pledge of Allegiance, it's that's retarded, literally retarded. And that drives, to your point, people the human soul away from God when you have those kind of interpretations, when you have adults living in that kind of fear of ideas and words. That's what I think drives people and kills the human soul. And that kind of gets back to the point I was making at the beginning, where it's going back to the fake world after spending days in a world where you can just openly discuss ideas and people don't get triggered by it. People actually get it. You can see their eyes light up and they want to talk about this stuff. And then you go back to the world where everyone has dead eyes and they're they're just zombies going through their day. It's very dehumanizing, and it's all because people have been conditioned to fear ideas and fear discourse and fear discussion, while at the same time openly talking about how much they love freedom and they love the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, those are just hollow platitudes that a lot of people, even people within the MAGA truth movement, do not actually practice what they preach. And I think it's a real problem. But if we want to touch on a few more of these.
Wait. Before we touch on some more practical examples, because this is like what often happens is you and I talk about these things that we want to do in the show, and then our love of ideas just causes a different organic pathway to just happen. It happens all the time, and I think it's a beautiful thing. That being said, we got 2 more ads that I'm just going to read the 2 ads right now, or just play them, and then we'll jump on any points you want to get at in the last
and I know you have a hard stop, so just pull the ripcord when you need to, and if I need to wind things down, I can do that solo. So
all right, so I'm gonna play My Shroom Vibe and then something on tallow. Here we are. Wow, tallow's big these days. Anyway, okay, here's My Shroom Vibe.
Hey there, Earthlings. I'm here on the streets of New York to tell you about something that's literally out of this world. You know, traveling between dimensions really takes it out of you, but I've found the perfect solution. My Shroom Vibe can now be your Shroom Vibe. Elevate your frequency. Get microdose capsules, gummies, and chocolate bars at myshroomvibe.com. Use code BADLANDS for 10% off your order. Trust me, galaxy hopping demands balance, and ours comes from Mother Nature. Organic, not synthetic. It's the real deal. Cy Lee, if you know what I mean. Check it out. Your frequency will thank you. Visit myshroomvibe.com. Organic goodness, not synthetic. Use code BADLANDS.
What the hell was that? All right. Anyway, so, okay. Yeah, that just happened. So let me just do the SD
Vibes is a new sponsor that promotes like psilocybin as for mental health, mental clarity stuff. And I was talking to G Money about it over the weekend because that was a sponsor that he had brought on. So
Okay. All right. Yep. Okay, good. Sure. SD tallow coming up here.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real: tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post-shave, anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code BADLANDS for 15% off. Ancient care, modern truth.
Self-disclosure.
Okay, so we got about 10 minutes to go. So what points do you want to hammer at fast? And by the way, I just want to say one thing on props to you so far. I got to say, when you first threw out your hypothesis that Trump may still be meeting with Putin after it was canceled in Budapest, I was like, it sounds like a stretch there, Gord. Sounds like a stretch. And then here it is. Trump just came out saying after meeting with Orban, yeah, it's likely that he'll meet still with Putin in Hungary. So more points to your hypothesis there. We'll see where it goes, but hats off. If I was wearing a hat, I would quickly remove it.
Yeah. And I think it'll probably happen sooner than people think. I mean, maybe even before before Christmas, before the end of the new year, we'll see. But Budapest certainly is a symbolic choice. I believe that's where Ukraine and Russia met in the early 90s to resolve like the breakup of the Soviet Union. Ukraine, I believe, gave up their nuclear weapons in exchange for statehood, like independent of Russia. And Budapest, I think, is another great symbolic place because number one, it's the hometown of Soros. They banned Soros like 10 years ago. Like he's not allowed to go to Hungary. Or Viktor Orban, I think, has been one of Trump's great allies in the geopolitical landscape. I was very encouraged when I was there in 2017, seeing them tearing down the communist buildings and rebuilding the old Baroque ones, which was considered controversial among their population because, it's investing state funds into architecture, basically. But the argument that Viktor Orban made was that it was all about restoring the culture and giving people a sense of national pride and unity and saying, this is what you come from. Be proud of it. Be proud of your parents. Be proud of your grandparents. Celebrate your culture. And I think that is worth every penny spent on bringing that to life, because you see the contrast with places that haven't done that. America would be at the top of that list. And look at the current state of mental health in America, especially among young people. And to that point, I think one of the things that I think is really, really encouraging to what Trump is doing is the fact that right now there are so many people within MAGA who are angry with Donald Trump because of the things that he's saying and doing right now. Most recently, I believe he just did an interview where he talked about the H-1B thing, and like Laura Ingraham asked him about H-1B, and he said, no, we need H-1B because they're not enough skilled workers in America. He basically like forwarded the Vivek Ramaswamy argument from last year that got Vivek blown up by MAGA, and people are hair on fire, angry at Trump about it. I think all of this is good. Like, I think Trump is smart enough to know if I say this, it's going to piss off the base. I think he knows that. I think he has had his finger firmly on the pulse of the populist zeitgeist for 10 years. He knows exactly where all the pressure points are. He knows exactly what the buzzwords are and the ideas are that are going to trigger people. And the thing that I find really encouraging is that so much of MAGA is at this point, seems fully prepared to earnestly walk away from Trump if they have to, in order to preserve the movement itself and the ideas that Donald Trump has championed for the past 10 years. And what they're saying is, if Donald Trump is not going to finish this fight, like the fight that he claimed he was picking up as recently as last year during his campaign, then we will. And that is exactly what I think Donald Trump wants. I don't think he wants to become the God King. I don't think he wants to become, the guy that fixes everything. And so everybody else just rests on their laurels and says, whatever, like, bring it on, Trump, like, trust the plan, deliver us from evil, that kind of thing. I think he wants his legacy, or I would hope he would want his legacy to be re-energizing the American people. So after he's gone, there is an army of Donald Trump's prepared to do exactly what he has done over the past 10 years and pick up the mantle. That is what we want. That would be a successful MAGA movement. And you're seeing that across the board now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's either, there's a lot of evidence to show that there actually is a bit of like there are theatrics right now that are designed to do exactly what you've been saying, to inflame certain emotions, to amplify certain tones that would normally be too silent for the ear to hear, but by amplifying and caricaturizing them, it can make them audible, which is necessary if we're going to be able to identify evil. So, and I noticed that you're queuing up a little image there. I think of the head chopper and Trump having met at the White House, right? Is that what you got?
Yeah, yeah. So
it's an example of that.
Yeah. So here's a perfect example. He brings Jelani in, Shara, they call him now, Jelani, in on Monday. It's the 250th anniversary birthday of the Marine Corps. We like CanCon and Alpha had a cake at GART. They sang the song. They did a whole celebration at the welcome party on Friday night. They brought up all the Marines who were at GART, and they did a whole presentation. So Monday was the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps. On that day, he brings a guy who is known by the State Department, $10 million bounty on his head 10 months ago for being an Al-Qaeda leader and an ISIS leader, to the extent that Jelani had to come out and like defend himself in the media and say, I had nothing to do with 9/11, even though I was friends with all those guys, right? He even went and did an interview on Fox News. You had an Al-Qaeda ISIS leader doing a interview on Fox News.
Yeah.
That is how clownish the entire world has become. And Trump, and if you don't think that Trump understood, I'm bringing this guy on the day before Veterans Day, on the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, because that was all over the zeitgeist where people were bringing up that coincidence, right? Here's this little exchange I thought was a funny. This was kind of like the nod and the wink. There are many moments like this, but here's just one of them.
This is men's fragrance. Yeah. This is it. No. It's the best fragrance. Come here, man.
I have no one here, sir.
Okay. So
I love
what
how
we'll do is just take
Jelani
that, put it in.
was really
And then
taken
the
aback, and
other
you
one
kind of
is-
tried to get away from this
Yeah,
fragrance.
dude. I mean, do you see the thing he's holding? I'm pretty sure this is like a Trump. This is like a Trump branded, cologne he's giving him. Look, I mean, is that Donald Trump? Like a statue of him on the? I think it might be a statue of him on the. He's literally sitting there hosing this guy down with cologne. Him and his assistant. He's explaining to him how great the fragrance is. Listen to what he says next. This is the funniest part.
So what we'll do is just take that, Joe, put it in, and then the other one is for your wife. How many wives? One for wife. You guys, I never know, right? I never know.
He says the other one I'm giving you is for your wife. How many wives do you have? And the guy, and he says one. He goes, well, with you guys, I never know.
That was pretty good.
I mean, it's like, yeah. It's he's trolling so hard, and it's very obvious that this Jelani guy was a television character that was created by the CIA. I think he was like the way they did in that Iron Man 3 movie, where they make like a joke of it, where it's like a British actor playing the Muslim terrorist on television. That's what this is too. And clearly this guy is no longer working for whoever he was working for before, just like the Kim Jong-un. I don't think he's controlled by the CIA the way that maybe he was before. And the fact that Turkey was in the room, like, did you see the surprise arrival of Turkey?
Yeah, the foreign minister showed up there. What's his name?
Hakan Fidan.
Yeah.
Hakan Fidan. And the best part is that Sunday night, Turkey, the foreign ministry of Turkey, puts out like a statement, just a one-sentence statement. It just says, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is going to join the meeting at the White House tomorrow. And what the international press was saying is Hakan Fidan even in D.C.? Like, we didn't even know he had flown over to D.C.
Yeah, I was really surprised,
Secretly flew over to D.C., and then the announcement was, oh, yeah, he's going to be at the meeting. And that's because Turkey, I think, is this guy's handler.
Yeah, it's possible, and I know you threw out the idea, and I think there's something to it that Turkey's been given jurisdiction to be the steward, the manager of that region, at least for the time being. Might also account for the plane, the military plane, the transport plane that was shot down, or not shot down. It crashed above Georgia. No.
It fell apart. It
fell apart, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. Is there any information pertaining to who might have done that yet coming up, or is it totally opaque?
I haven't seen anything yet. There was, but there was some pilots in the chat yesterday who made some good points. They said that the engines were still running on the 4 propellers as it was falling down. There was no explosion. It was a clean cut. You can clearly see all the pieces that are falling down. You can clearly see just a straight line. There wasn't like a jagged line. There was no fire. There was, none of that. It was like somebody went in and unscrewed all the ratchets, and just at a certain point it just fell apart in the air. I mean, I don't know, but it could just be weak steel. I mean, who knows? But it's certainly it looks like sabotage. I mean, it looks like sabotage to me.
Yeah. So that this appearance of the foreign minister at this meeting definitely would be a factor to bring into that calculus as far as like triangulating in on what interests might not want Turkey to be involved as a dominant power within that region, maybe communicating some message. So that's relevant for sure. A couple of other points that I guess are worth like just hashing out quickly, which is Ukraine. Definitely a lot of blows struck against Kiev. We're talking about Nazis, unreconstructed Nazis, multi-generational Nazi revisionist movements and what their effects are. And then we're talking about Ukraine, because all of the disaster of what's been going on in Ukraine as a chess piece on the board of the great game could not have been possible were it not for a hard pro-Nazi, even I would say occult inner sanctum that's been groomed and incubated for a long time and weaponized, deployed by various CIA, MI6 protected agencies to be weapons against Russia as a proxy. So that's been running now for quite a number of years. And what we've seen is Russia taking back a lot of territory and evidence of a certain shifting wind or a sea change inside of Ukraine itself, where I know back in 2023, Kolomoskoy, a billionaire financier behind seems also the shoot down of the plane that was leaving Iranian airspace in January of 2020. That was actually Kolomostoy had his fingers on that in a number of ways through the air traffic control system that he also co-controlled through his organization, his Privet Bank, his Gazprom, not Gazprom, sorry, his Burisma holdings operation. So many points of evil have been sort of made possible by this guy who's been detained now for 2 years for crimes for money laundering. He's been forced to pay or been told to pay, I think, by a UK court, $3 billion to Privet Bank that he laundered money out of. Over the years, his billionaire collaborator, Bogolyubov, I can't pronounce that name, has escaped arrest from Ukraine by, I don't know where he went, maybe Turkey or something. So we've got now that, we've got FBI probes that have zeroed in on 2 other former backers of Zelensky, the Zuckerman brothers. So it seems like you do have some shifting of the gears going on. What's your take on the Ukraine?
For some reason, you repeat what you just said. For some reason, it just froze. Like your face just froze for me, and I didn't get any sound.
Yeah, I just said sorry. What's your take on the Ukraine front based on all of that stuff before we phase out?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that it's reaching a crescendo because you have Trump, who has now forced NATO to bankrupt itself in order to continue to fund the war. I just saw this morning that they're now going to lower the draft age further. I think it was already at like 26. They were speculating they're going to lower it to 18. Angelina Jolie, we were laughing about this over the weekend, was there last week. Chris Paul was speculating that maybe she might actually be dating Zelensky now. Apparently, Katy Perry is dating Justin Trudeau. So he's like, this is not out of the realm of possibilities that we have an arranged Hollywood couple here. But her car was pulled over and her driver, who's Ukrainian, was dragged away and conscripted in the Ukrainian military. And she went down to the recruitment office and said, do you know who I am? And they were like, yeah, we don't care. This is Ukraine. He's going to go fight and die in Russia. I mean, it's so farcical that it's almost funny. I mean, then you have the video of the Ukrainian general that I put in the news brief lamenting the fact that he says 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers have literally just walked away from the front lines and deserted the army. So you have them like dragging younger and younger men away to go die against the Russian war machine. Meanwhile, including like celebrities or celebrity security guards. Meanwhile, you have Ukrainian generals lamenting the fact that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers are allegedly deserting the army because they don't want to die in the Russian war machine. And then meanwhile, you have the Republican Party full throat, Lindsey Graham, like shrieking like a harpy in ecstasy at all the bloodshed and the people dying around the world in these kind of conflicts. It's just, it couldn't be more clear who the bad guys are. I mean, if you haven't figured out that the neocons in the Republican Party are the bad guys, then I don't know what to tell you. And I think we owe Donald Trump a tremendous thank you for making that abundantly clear. Like the GOP is not the future of MAGA. Well, and they want to be the future of MAGA. And if they become the future of MAGA, that is our failure, not Donald Trump's failure.
Yeah. Well, definitely the only thing viable that I see in the United States is what has emerged out of the MAGA movement. As confused as that movement is, the only thing moral enough that has the fiber to validate its existence is coming out of that movement. So I agree with you on those points. I would just add, while keeping this hypothesis of what is the subtle undercurrents in play, I would also say too, like I've got multiple hypotheses in my mind at the same time. Now, it's possible, it would be sad, very tragic, if the choice to bring in Jolani on the anniversary of the celebration of the U.S. Marines, if that was a sick joke, that would be very unfortunate. The what is it? That golden calf being brought into Mar-a-Lago filled with $100 bills with Donald Trump's face on it that people might have seen.
Yep.
Maybe he's doing the amplification of the Babylonian sort of, or this worship of Mammon sickness, and he's just exacerbating it by showcasing the ugliness of what that is. it might be a Rosicrucian operation. I'll just say that. It might be.
Absolutely.
If it is, take it as it is, but that would be unfortunate. And we shouldn't, again, go all nihilistic, as some would be psychologically inclined to do. Because if people watch this movie, okay, a lot of the template that I've noticed over the last century has been organized around predictive programming of fiction. H.G. Wells, his War of the Worlds, as well as his nonfiction. A lot of the stuff wasn't done just to entertain. It was done to guide the hand of those who would be organizing this post-human blueprint and how to create the stories and narratives that would be used by social engineers to herd and corral society in direction. So H.G. Wells' stories are done specifically for that purpose, create an enemy from above. How would humanity unite to fight an invader from Mars, let's say? There's a bunch of things. I made a whole documentary on this. Similarly, if you look at some of the horror movie creators, including the guy who made They Live in 1989, featuring Roddy Piper. People should watch that movie, because I think that sort of thing, if you think about what a nihilistic MAGA psychology might become if it's broken of a dream of a golden age, if that somehow gets crushed, a lot of people would become what you see Roddy Piper doing in that movie to fight these shape-shifting lizards that have taken over society, created globalization, to bring about a depopulation. And they're not human. They look human, but when you wear the special glasses, they're not. And it's okay thus to kill them and go into banks and shopping malls, shooting up the plate. That's possible. Or the general from what's it? The Strangelove movie, Dr. Strangelove.
Dr. Strangelove.
To stop worrying and love the bomb. That general who's all obsessed about how the communists want to steal our bodily fluids and is willing to go anarchistic and shoot up and declare war on the U.S. military, which is controlled by commies. That represents an archetype. There's a psychological archetype that's more than the character, but that represents something which can be infused hypnotically into a people and then invoked at a certain time if the conditions are met. So that's something people have to look for if there's traces or elements of that within our own psyche, so that we could avoid falling for emotional traps if that's triggered. That being said, I really do hope that behind the threats, the ugly words pertaining to the threatened military invasion of Nigeria, of Venezuela, of Iran, of China, behind the ugly words, there's actually beautiful maneuvers being made around a sovereign alliance. I hope that that's true. But action is everything. So far, I haven't seen any evil sorts of actions to justify my attacking Trump. So I'm going to still hold out hope that the sovereign alliance hypothesis is in play. But again, I don't know. I can't say with the certainty that I'm fully on board anything at this moment. So we'll see.
Well, I see Maggie in the chat talking about Julian's Rum. Julian's Rum used to have a show here on Badlands, and love Julian's Rum. I think he's been a great commentator. He's also somebody who I think is black-pilled a little bit on Trump and is openly talking about how disappointed he is with how with what Trump is saying right now regarding the H-1B1 thing, but also how Trump was attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene the other day because MTG was saying, the economy is not fixed. The price of goods have actually gone up, and people are getting crushed under the current condition, their current living standards, and which is 100% true, 100% true. And Trump saying, that's all nonsense. Don't believe any of that. That's all a psyop. Again, I think Trump is knowing he's antagonizing people who can ostensibly refute that and say, no, that's actually not true. And I saw JR was posting this morning about, he's like, I know I'll never own a home. I know that I'll never have the things that my parents had because of the economic conditions of our time. And that is really, really depressing. But again, I go back to the fact that people are prepared to drop Trump if they feel like Trump has betrayed the cause, which I don't think he has. But I think he is flexing that a little bit because he can, because I think it's all going to come full circle. But he has the bandwidth right now, I think, to afford to be able to do these kind of things. Because if everything does work out, those people will come back and they'll say, okay, this all worked out. But he's testing the limits, I think, of our patience And it's good to do that. It's good to know where those limits are. And I think the more people push back and say, you know what, if Trump's not going to do it, we're going to do it. If Trump is not going to finish the mission, we're going to go finish the mission. And that is the mentality that everybody needs to adopt. Not trust the plan, not whatever the God King says goes, not, okay, well, Trump says today that, maybe we should do H1B1. Maybe we should sell out the country to the globalists. Maybe we should, embrace ISIS and Al-Qaeda as something great, which is not what Trump is saying, but I'm just saying the optics of Giuliani being there. I think that's a humiliation ritual against the neocons who built this guy up for years as like this evil entity. And now Trump's parading him around DC and forcing him to meet with the very people who used to say a year ago that he was a bad guy. I think it's a humiliation ritual, but this, that, or the other, if the guy does deliver peace to the Middle East, because he's being forced to, that's something that I think is very positive. The fact that the Saudis have paid off the entire IMF debt, so the IMF can't come in and requisition everything in Syria and get the sanctions lifted by Trump, which is what has happened now. The fact that next Tuesday, before you and I speak again, the Saudis are coming to DC, and I think we are going to get some of the biggest bilateral trade announcements we've ever seen thus far. Next Tuesday afternoon. I think we're going to get a nuclear deal. I think we're going to get a massive military equipment sales deal, which will signal us leaving the Middle East for good, and the Saudis and the Turks and the Qataris taking over security in the Middle East, in spite of Israel, because Israel does not want Saudi to get any of this stuff. All of this is just going to be backhanded moves that are backhanding Netanyahu, backhanding the Israelis consistently, while going out there and saying nobody loves Israel more than Donald Trump. Nobody has done more for Israel than Donald Trump. Mark Levin and Laura Loomer are saying Qatar is the greatest enemy America could face right now. And then an hour later, Trump is on the tarmac in Qatar, and Tamim is literally coming to his plane and prostrating himself before Trump like he is the king of the world. It's like, and then Trump grabs him by the hand and is like, I love this guy so much. It's like, it's there, but it's also not. There's plausible deniability, but it's there. It's like every single moment that the regime thinks it has a new attack vector, Trump just totally rug pulls them, and does it in a way, by the way, that gets the base angry at him, so that people are, up in arms and energized, and the same way we were energized when Joe Biden was president. Which we shouldn't lose that energy. That energy should carry forward forever.
Well said, Gordon. We live in damn interesting time. I really have to say it's quite a time to be alive. I appreciate always these conversations. And next week we might have to do a pre-record. Otherwise I might be in a flight back home while the show. So we'll talk about that. But thank you everybody for watching today's episode of Breaking History, and look forward to the next one. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.